And as I'm sure you're hearing on various conferences and events in these interesting months, the Commission had to pivot from our originally planned in-person interactive panel, which we were going to do in March, to this new now virtual conversation. And we are so pleased because it also opens it up for a broader audience. And we do look forward to gathering again in person in the future, but for now, let's get going. So, next slide. First, what we'll do is we'll just introduce ourselves to all of you, and rather than the traditional bio or resume, which you can find on LinkedIn, each of these wonderful women is going to give you a glimpse into their journey. And I want to encourage everybody to ask questions in the Q&A tab. We're going to keep an eye on that. And then also just to interact in the chat tab. And you just think of that as a way of how you can do your active listening. So the way that you would normally do in person, leaning in, smiling, nodding your head in agreement, nudging each other, because we can't see you. So feel free to use the chat to do that. And we'll just, I'll kick it off. So next slide. That's me, Anisha, and we'll just go click next. My background, my parents moved here from Europe, came to the Bay Area, and I had my kind of youth upbringing out camping, spending time with family, lots of soccer, skiing, and just a wonderful time with travels with the family. Next, I went up to University of Oregon, so yes, I am a duck. And from Oregon, went over to Switzerland, worked at the Derby Hotel in Davos, and then the Rothschild Bank in Zurich. Was there for 3 years, came back, worked at Stanford, then went and got my MBA at University of San Francisco. So yes, I stuck with the green and yellow, kind of like those colors. And moved from there over to Anderson Consulting, which became Accenture. From Anderson Consulting, I followed my boss over to Primitive Logic, stuck in the consulting world. We were acquired by Logic 2020. And then just some of the final things you see there is I'm all about lifelong learning, just keep on learning, travel. And I'm a proud moment I included there that I thought was just so darn cool. I sit on the Commission for Status of Women and was able to chat with retired Supreme Court Justice Sandra Day O'Connor. I'm past president of that commission, and you can see there in one of the lower pictures, Sandra Day O'Connor. And there's my dog Tank and family. So moving it along.
Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for including me on this panel. I hope that you guys are able to get something out of this, and as Anisha said, feel free to ask questions as they come up. But I'm Toni Moos. I am a family practice physician and the medical director of the Student Health Services at San Jose City College. So I'll do a quick recap of my background as well. I was born in Trinidad and Tobago to a Trinidadian father and Guyanese mother. The falls that you see on the left there are the Kaichur Falls in Guyana, the tallest single drop fall in the world. I spent a lot of my childhood in Geneva, where my father was getting his PhD at the university at that time. And from there moved on to Brasilia, where I went to the American School of Brazil, and then to London, where I did most of my middle school years. And he retired and we moved to New Jersey, and that's how I got to America. Anyway, came out west to Stanford to do my undergrad in human biology, which is where I met my husband, Kevin, and he's here on the left with our 4 children, ages 17, 19, and 21 now. And after we got married, we moved back to the East Coast, where I went to the University of Pittsburgh at the School of Medicine. Below the Stanford Health Care, I went to O'Connor Hospital for my residency. But the picture below is my family in Guyana. We have family reunions about every 5 years with my mother's side of the family. So I have about 70 first cousins, so a large extended family. And the picture below that is my sister and her kids. And anyway, I love to travel, read, box, run, Zumba, anything that kind of gets me outdoors and gets me active. That's it for me.
All right. Hi, everyone. This is Jing. I currently work at Genentech. I'll start from the upper left corner. That picture there is Mount Tai. And I was born in a small town called Tai'an in China. So the meaning of the name Tai'an actually derived from the ancient saying is, if Mount Tai is safe, then the four sea, the whole world are safe. So Mount Tai attracted many multiple kings in the past through dynasty to visit, offer sacrifice to the heaven god, and pray for harvest. I studied in Peking University in China. I came to the Bay Area in 2001, right before September 11, and studied statistics at UC Berkeley. And then after that, in 2006, I started working at Genentech. I was born and raised at Genentech. First job, never left. And down below, there are 3 pictures of my family member. I love every one of them. And I have 2 daughters, aged 10 and 13. You can tell they love soccer. I love many kinds of sports. I like to read detective novel. I like music. And I also really like to travel with the family around the world. My favorite character is Snoopy. At this age, I always laughed by my kids. But I would end with one of my favorite quote is, always find a way to laugh. It may not add years to your life, but certainly I like to your years.
Hey everyone, my name is Juliana Garcia. My pronouns are she and her, and I am so excited to be here today. I am currently a program manager at Facebook Reality Labs, and we support all of the different hardware initiatives that Facebook is working on, Oculus headsets, Portal, and some of our future AR products. Before that, I spent 5 years at Amazon Lab 126. I was on the legal team for a little bit, and then I also did a career pivot into program management, supporting the Alexa International Expansion team, doing a lot of really cool early stage language data collection for some of the languages Alexa can speak. And something that I wanted to call out is that I'm obviously very comfortable with who I am right now. I'm a queer Latinx woman, and I really make it a priority in everything that I do to bring my full identity everywhere. So you can see I'm on the San Mateo County LGBTQ Commission, and I love the work that we're doing to try to bring more visibility and representation for the LGBTQ community in our county. I also am very active in Lesbians Who Tech, which is a great organization. If you're not aware of it, encourage you to join. But part of my story that I want to touch on that's not related necessarily to my career development is that I wasn't always this out and proud, and it was actually a very hard journey for me. And part of how I was able to get more comfortable with myself was through the resources that I found in my career, through mentors and sponsors who really pushed me to be who I am. And just one piece of advice that I want everyone to take away from this is that, you know, really getting where we are in our careers needs you to bring your full self to that. Other than that, on a personal level, I live with my partner of 4 years. We're engaged, hoping to get married whenever COVID can allow, and we live with our 2 dogs in East Palo Alto. And that's it for me.
Hi, everybody. My name is Subha Rajana. I'm an entrepreneur, investor, and a board member. And as you can see on my bio slide, my first picture is my mom and me, because she's a huge influence on me. And her advice to me always is, your courage is your true wealth. And I lost my father when I was 17, and since then she has been a great advisor throughout my life. So my journey started, of course, from India, and where, I went to an engineering school, which is not, really the norm during those days. And I came to this country again. It's not the norm, especially before marriage for an Indian family, right? So I came to Detroit, and then I was in Texas. Yes, I was in Texas. Yeah. And then from there, I moved to California, then moved back to Minnesota. So I got my master's in environment engineering, and I started working in one of those male-dominated industries, right? And most men during that time, they did not know how to talk to me, especially with the field supervisors and all that. So it was quite a learning experience, but yet it was very enjoyable. And the bright side, I learned a lot. And then my transition to technology field, where I moved to software as a developer, project manager, and so on. And I have always been an entrepreneur, waiting to start something. So I've been going on that journey for the past 20 years almost. Currently, I'm the CEO of Biarca. Biarca is a cloud services company. And we are doing lots of interesting things. And I'm also an advisory board on Pratham, which is a global nonprofit. And I'm part of this wonderful organization called How Women Lead, as a committee member where we advocate for women on board. And I'm very happy to share that I just became a founding LP on a venture fund, How Women Invest, where we invest in women-founded technology-enabled companies. If there are any entrepreneurs who are looking for funding, please reach out to me. On the personal side, I have two children, 22 and 16. And I have a wonderful supporting husband who loves every crazy thing I do. And I am I'm an advocate for female leadership and technology adoption for change. And I love reading, and I'm so happy to kind of spend more time with reading during this quarantine times. And I think that's about it. Yeah.
Hi, everybody. I'm Melissa Dinwiddie, and I actually went through the Palo Alto school systems together with Anisha way back when. Grew up in Palo Alto, and I am here as a creative. I have a background as an artist and creative, and I run a consultancy called Creative Sandbox Solutions. I'm logged in twice, so you can see me on one screen as Melissa Dinwiddie, she, her, and then I'm also logged in as a piece of paper as Creative Sandbox Solutions. So my consultancy, I help take the board out of board meetings, B-O-R-E-D. I help take the board, B-O-R-E-D, out of board meetings, virtual and three-dimensional. And one of the ways that I do that is through graphic recording, which is what I'm going to be doing today, taking visual notes of what happens today. I also lead, I help people learn how to run non-boring virtual meetings using applied improvisation activities and things like that. I teach bespoke workshops in non-boring virtual meetings. I do virtual facilitation in team development, leadership development, innovation, things like that. But today I'm going to be doing live visual note taking. So that's my role today.
So before we actually jump into a discussion with these Wonder Women, let's do a quick poll. So the poll will come up in a moment. And the question for all of you is, do you believe that your gender has limited your career choices or goals? So take a moment. Oh, I guess they're all here. Just focus on number one. No need to look at the others. And it looks like some have blurred together. So I guess there should be 4 answers there. Absolutely no question would be the first. Haven't noticed or thought about it is the second. Nope, not at all is the third. So if you're choosing that first one, it's absolutely no question is the answer. So that would be the first bubble. The second bubble would be, haven't noticed or thought about it. And the third bubble would be, nope, not at all.
Anisha, they won't be able to submit the poll unless they answer all of the questions that are there.
Oh, man. All right, well, let's just go through all the polling questions at one time. How about the second one? Do you believe that the next generation of women will be better off or worse off than this generation is? So the answers to that would be number 1, definitely better off. Will continue to rise and evolve. Number 2, I'm not sure. And number 3, unfortunately, worse off. And then our third poll, right? So I guess I have to click on it to stick so I can keep going. What is your favorite part of the new now? Would that be a reduced or no commute? More time with family? Increased focus on routine? More time in the garden? Or reduce barriers across locations? And then our fourth polling question, what does work look like for you through the rest of 2020? Continued virtual from home, continued in person at a workplace, slowly going back to the workplace, returning full time, and if there's an other, feel free to throw it down there in the chat. All right, I'm letting you guys finish up. And we'll just start moving into stories as we wait for the poll to close. Maybe Tanya, do you have a sense on the closing time of the poll? Oh, here we go. Let's take a look at the results real quick. All right, so quick reminder that that first one is absolutely no question. So it sounds like 62% of you says that some of your career choices or goals have been hindered by your gender. Interesting. So do you believe that the next generation of women will be better off? Definitely better off. I love it, 72%. And then what's your favorite part of the new now? I'm with you guys on the reduced or no commute. Definitely looks like a lot of you also more time with family. Love it. And then number 4, what does work look like for you through the rest of 2020? Looks like majority of people, it's at that 71%, will be continuing from home. So thank you, everybody. And let's shift over into our stories. And obviously I can see these like soaring capes behind all of these Wonder Women who are going to be sharing their stories with you. And I think by the end of our session today, all of you will see those soaring capes too. So first question will go to Toni, and just quick reminder for panelists to watch your mute and unmuting so that you're not just talking to yourself. Toni, the medical field requires a strong foundation in both science and math. And did you have to excel in all of the fields of science and math in order to pursue your career?
So the short, quick answer to that question is definitely not. You do not have to excel in them in order to go into medicine. So I want to talk a little bit about kind of how I went through the process and what I tell students, pre-medical students in particular, who are struggling, especially when it comes to the science requirements. So I love being a physician. I feel that the impact on not only my life, but hopefully on the lives of the patients I take care of is very positive. I feel it's such a fulfilling career, and I have never regretted having pursued it. I have to say, so the woman who hired me into this position as medical director 20 years ago, Janet, she retired 2 years ago, but one of her sayings was, we all have gifts and gaps. And I think about that all the time. We cannot all be good at everything. So I think one of my gifts is I love communicating with people. I love to interact with people. I feel that I'm compassionate and empathetic. And one of my big gaps is definitely chemistry. I struggled in undergrad. That was the bane of my existence. You know, at Stanford, if you get to a certain point, you can drop a class and it doesn't show up on your transcript. At least it did at the time I was there. And by 2 to 3 weeks into organic chemistry, I knew it was not going to go well for me. So I dropped it at that time, but I had to take it because it's a requirement from applying to medical school. So I took it another quarter and succeeded. But what it made me do was second guess, you know, is this a career I should really be going into if I'm struggling with a subject that I really should excel in? And I just want to remind, and I say this to the students I speak to as well, we cannot excel at everything, but we can work hard and continue to learn at the things that we really want to succeed in. So, you know, the requirements for medical school vary from school to school, but most require chemistry, biology, physics, math and statistics, and then English, because they want you to be able to write as well as analyze information. So I think the key for science, the science foundation for medicine is learning how to critically think, learning how to problem solve, and having the foundation that then enables us to figure out what is going on in the human body that leads to disease, and what is going on in the human body that makes medications work. And so having that foundation is the key. Having to have an A is not. So what I also recommend to students is that you do not have to major in undergrad in a science in order to go into medicine. Make sure you pick something that you truly enjoy doing and can really excel at while fulfilling those requirements. And about 34% of students who actually apply to medical school don't major in a science. They may major in humanities, they may major in sociology and so on. Some of the softer sciences that obviously are still teaching them, they're still learning and growing, but they're not theoretically the sciences that other people may think of. So that's what I feel people need to pursue, is things that they enjoy, to make sure that the work that they're putting in is going to be worthwhile. And I don't know how many of you saw Amy Allison yesterday speak in the opening rally. She was fabulous. But one of the things that she said that stuck with me is that failure is a part of success. We have to fail in order to get to the next step and succeed. If you succeed right away, you're not challenged, you don't learn. And so that is something that we all have to keep in mind, and that lifelong learning is something that we should all want, because then we grow. So those are the things that I'd recommend.
Thanks so much, Toni. Oh, I love that. And I like that you referred back to Amy Allison. She was so fabulous. Moving over to Jing, I know that you're involved in the women's group at Genentech, and we've chatted about that a bit. And so what do you see as the responsibility of senior leaders regarding diversity?
Yeah, thank you, Anisha. I'm actually going to cover this probably from two angles. One is what you specifically asked, like, what do we do as a leader? And the second is more to the audience, to yourself as a woman that actually pursue professional direction, development in your career. So I would say from leadership perspective, it definitely should start from the top. If this effort is to be successful, the leadership must be the catalyst, right? We are in a very different era. If you think about our mother and our grandmother, their career choices are very limited or maybe to none. And nowadays, many of us have opportunities to explore, to develop to our full potential. But not everyone is lucky. And if you look around, there's still very few women in the senior leadership role. And I majored in math. Of course, I'm going to throw some numbers there, right? So in the drug industry, the female chief executive remain exceedingly rare. It's less than 10% of the biotech top leaders last year based on the number. It's a shockingly low number. And also, I think as women, we constantly face the hard choices between the professional success and your personal fulfillment. And women are dropping out in some of the leadership role. And just give you one more number. There's only like 7% of top executives in the Fortune 100 company are women. So as a leader, I feel you set up the culture of the company, and to support women, you offer flexible time and mentorship. That's really key. But the second part I really want to touch is we really need to promote women as a leader and also as an individual to make sure you have a seat at the table and believe in yourself and negotiate for yourself. So, one example I want to share is, women in general systematically underestimate your own capability. I recently made a career change and went for an interview for 2 internal positions. And one usually is offered to the folk with MBA background. And the other position usually is offered to individuals with MD background. So as I said, I majored in math as an undergraduate and majored in statistics in graduate school. So it's a big change in my career, which I thought about for long. And that is not possible without very supportive management and good training as a drug developer in this field and good knack within the company. And most importantly, the strong interest from yourself to challenge yourself. I felt confident and ready to go. And I remember on my way to work that morning, I drove past San Francisco airport, thinking about, I'm going to face a panel of 4 senior men leaders in the company, which I know them, and expecting round and round scenario questions in my mind. And guess the first one came to my mind is, am I good enough? So it seems very common for women than men to underestimate your own capability. I feel if I have doubt on myself and there is a lack of support from the senior management, I would not have my current job. So I recently took that job in the oncology group as a global development lead, which, as I said, usually is a job offered to individuals with MD degree. I'm very proud. I really like my job. So I would say, women in general don't negotiate for themselves. So promotion, salary increase, you name it in the workforce. And then in general, we tend to attribute ourselves to external factors, right? Somebody maybe helped us. We work really hard. We get lucky. So I think you deserve the success. You deserve the promotion, and don't stop looking for opportunities for yourself. And I also want to close that with the question, Anisha, you asked. I think it's the responsibility for our leaders to create a culturally competent workforce that is better capable to effectively and respectfully serve as a rich variety of culture, race, gender, experience, and perspectives.
Oh my gosh, I absolutely agree. And I think, something that you said at the very beginning about promoting other women, or making sure that you have a place at the table, and that's something that we can all do for each other as well, so that if we do have those self-doubts in the back of our minds, that we can support each other. So definitely right there with you. Thank you. So moving to Juliana. Do you have examples or suggestions of how we can also help leadership understand the value of diversity and how to support it? So I thought that was a nice tie-in with what Jing just shared.
Yeah, no, I definitely think it's an important aspect to focus on. You know, you can have leaders that are very invested in diversity and inclusion and equity, like Jing, but there are other, you know, organizations that may not have diverse representation or people who have that top of mind. And so I really advocate that, you know, we need to demand that this is important for company culture, and not only just internally, but externally. So a lot of the work that I do is creating inclusive culture. When I first joined Amazon in 2013, there wasn't an LGBT group in my office. And I had come into that role sort of after recently coming back out of the closet for a second time, and I didn't want to go back in. And I really found that finding other people in the LGBTQ community was important for me to be able to bring my full self to work and to actually excel in my career. So we got together and we launched this group called Glamazon in the Bay Area, and it's grown, you know, significantly over the past years, and it's continuing to grow even though I'm not there. And so I think like taking action like that, organizing and putting that emphasis on positive, inclusive culture, it really sends a message to leadership that this is important and that we need to take this seriously. I also think that, you know, being vocal, I consider myself to be a fierce advocate, and I always am talking about DE&I, and that's not necessarily my day job, but it's important. And so I view that as my responsibility. I've, you know, grown so much in my career because of the opportunities given to me by being myself at work. And I really think it's important to advocate for those who may not feel comfortable with themselves or feel like they have a space in tech or in the corporate world. So I definitely think that being vocal is critical. And I have an example where last year we have an internal tool at Facebook called Workplace. It's our professional version of Facebook, and all of our communications are done via posts and comments. And I made a post last year after we had an organizational structure change where it was mostly white men moved into a leadership position. And I just, you know, felt very passionate about posting saying, you know, this is not okay. This is, you know, it's 2019 at the time, and we need to have more diverse representation in order to build the future. And I was nervous about posting it, but I actually got a lot of positive feedback, and women reached out to me and said, you know, I didn't necessarily feel comfortable sharing those thoughts with anyone, and I was so happy to see that you posted so publicly about it. And I even got feedback from leadership, you know, thank you for calling this out. We didn't message this correctly, that, you know, we did this change for XYZ reasons, and want to call out and acknowledge sort of the elephant in the room that we're lacking diversity. So, you know, my experience being vocal, fiercely advocating really just yields positive dividends and all around. So that's one piece of advice I have for encouraging leadership to take this seriously, is being vocal from the ground up and demanding that type of inclusion in our workspace. And one other area is that I think, you know, we aren't all in leadership positions. We're growing in our careers. And so I think feeling comfortable about trying to make change in areas that we actually have control in is another angle to take. So if you're hiring a team, look at diverse candidates, make it a definite goal of yours when you're hiring to interview diverse candidates, prioritize networking with diverse candidates and people interested in the company. Also giving your time to sponsor and mentor folks who may not necessarily have had those opportunities. That was something that was instrumental in my career. I had different sponsors who helped me pivot from being a contracts manager in a legal department to program managing. And I wouldn't have been able to make that career shift without having a technical background, without having a PM background, but for a woman who saw the enthusiasm I had for this role and this type of work. So definitely keeping your eye out for people who might need that leg up that you can influence, I think is really important. And the last thing I'll say is what I mentioned, I think on my intro slide, is that we're all working towards building a really innovative future, and we can't do that without diverse representation at all levels. And so one of the things I constantly say all the time, both at work, in my personal life, everywhere, I just, you know, without diversity, we'll fail. And so that's really something that I want to make sure that people understand, you know, scream it from the hills that we need to have diverse representation in order to build the future that we want and deserve.
Oh, I love it. Thank you for being our glamazon. That is so oh, that's awesome. Thank you, Juliana. So Subha, what I love is coming from Facebook and what Juliana just shared sort of in the tech space. What are your thoughts about future of work, especially as it's influenced by technology? So such as like AI, you know, artificial intelligence or machine learning or cloud or automation. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, thank you, Anisha. So I was approached in January, earlier this year, to do a webinar on future of work, right? So I'm all set to do something. As a matter of fact, in August, in terms of like how future of work is going to be with all this technology influence. However, then COVID happened, right? So my thoughts and insights on how this is going to have an effect on future of work has changed quite a bit. Definitely future of work will be impacted by many factors, and technology is one of the main influences. But there are always two sides to the coin, right? So technologies such as cloud computing, ML AI, security, AR, VR, as Juliana is heading that at Facebook, and blockchain are going to be taking the front seat during this evolution. However, there has to be some guardrails on how this could be leveraged, as IT and HR will play a big role. Workplaces will be collecting a lot more data of their employees, that may be intrusive to their privacy. Like, data on time management tools, check-in process, checkout process, increased security, and how are they going to use all this data, right? And HR and managers have their job cut out for them, as they need to rely on this technology more to measure success for performance evaluations. And I know, culture is being discussed today, and I believe that this is going to have a huge impact on this technology-enabled workforce culture. And I'm sure the terms will be coined as we move forward, how that is going to be affected. And especially Gen Z, as they are entering into workforce, the norms are completely different for them, right? This is definitely influenced by the remote work environment, which is technology enabled. How are they going to be evaluated, and what kind of success metrics? So so I do believe that technology is going to make leaps and bounds progress, like in terms of rising to the need, and coming up with all kinds of tools and all kinds of applications to address the issues that we are having. But I also feel like we need to be careful about what is the other side of this technology, for that matter, anything. It always has a good side and a bad side. So I'm sure new standards and regulations will come into effect to address some of these. But with all being said and done, the bright side is that there may be many new markets created to support this new norm. And as I said, we just have to tread this carefully. The positive and negative side, effects of knowing the positive and negative effects of how this is going to change the world.
Oh my gosh, can we just keep talking about this stuff?
I would love to, but of course we don't have time.
We'll just have to create new sessions for each of these topics. I feel like I want to keep drilling into what each of you is saying. But we don't have all day for this. Let's just throw it out for whoever wants to jump in first. As you are looking forward and knowing the challenges and different opportunities that we face as a society, how is your approach to continued growth and contributing to a better world shifting, if at all? And obviously, feel free, whoever wants to jump in first, just go for it.
I can jump in, Anisha. I'm really looking forward to the new way that we're working in a more dispersed model geographically with an increased technology that helps us connect more, to tap into new markets that, you know, we haven't necessarily had access to in the past, that in theory should have more diverse employees that we can look to. And you know, I really think that having people not only with diverse you know, ethnicities, identities, but also diverse educational experiences is really important. I myself don't have a technical background. I have a BA in Spanish and my law degree, but here I am working at Facebook Reality Labs, and I think my perspective really adds a lot, and I've had that feedback from colleagues, from managers, that it's important to have that. So I really, what I'm looking forward to is to having access to more people that have a diverse set of experiences that they can bring to the table.
Oh, absolutely. I love it. Subha.
Yeah. So recently I read a book called The Sun Does Shine by Anthony Ray Hinton. I'm sure many of you read it. You know, it is about Anthony Ray being on death row for 30 years for something that he did not commit, right? What struck me throughout that book is that how are his ability to maintain a positive outlook until he was released, right? And I know it's easier said than done, but as a society, we need to focus on adaptability to new norms with hope at the foundation level, right? I mean, the continued growth will happen only collectively, and we all need to commit to that change. We all need to commit to change for better. So conversations and actions are very important during this time. I do see the shift, you know, to this action-oriented engagement, you know, right in my own home, like, you know, led by my daughter, where we are talking about, like, you know, a lot of issues that we have and how do we change for better. So, I mean, like a lot of things are on our plate right now, pandemic and, you know, new work, like, you know, the new way of working and BLM and, you know, elections and all these things. And I do feel that, you know, we are bombarded by all these different things, you know, coming at us from different directions. But I think, you know, combining all these and having those conversations and kind of converting those conversations into action, you know, so that is something that, you know, that we should make that part of our new norm.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Jing or Toni, thoughts?
Yeah, just a couple of things to add. I think, you know, I continue the career development and, you know, diversity to make yourself successful, keep looking for opportunities for you. I would just add one thing is make sure you're intentional, right? Intentionally continue to build your relationship, make sure you have good performance, carry on in your career development. I recently listened to a talk from Career Harris. I think now she's in Morgan Stanley. She worked on Wall Street for 30 years. I love what she have. A great tip I will share with this audience today as well. Make sure you have 3 people in your life, in your career. One is advisor, where you can go and to get practical feedback, right, to help you do your daily job. And you have a mentor, someone who knows you well, and you can tell them really anything, the ugly side, the beautiful side of yourself, and help you succeed. And lastly, your sponsor, where you bring your best part of you to, and then they can sit at the table to find opportunities for you.
Oh, I love it. We almost need to have like a little takeaway afterwards from all of these awesome tips that you guys are sharing. Toni, anything you'd like to add?
Just to add to what Jing said, I totally agree that having the mentor and the sponsor are key, and being a mentor to those who are in a position or hope to be in a position similar to yours is also very helpful. I work with, I have a friend who works with Menlo Atherton High School students, Latinx students, who are hoping to go into either nursing or medical, to be a medical doctor. And having students just come through the clinic and being a positive role model, of course that's not happening now, but that can also be done virtually, connecting with people who need advice, being a positive role model and giving information that would help propel them to the next step is key. And I just want to add one thing, especially in this virtual world that we live in. You know, telemedicine has changed how physicians are seeing patients now. And what has struck me is how much we rely on speaking to people in order to actually ascertain diagnoses. The hands-on portion obviously is very important, but this has opened up opened our eyes to the fact that history taking, connecting with patients can be done like this in order to be almost as helpful. So that I think is something that we will continue to see in the future. Not to this extent once things opened up, but definitely I think it'll be an option that we see down the road.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Great points. And you know, it's interesting when you said that about telemedicine, because I have been wondering like how that's working for everybody, but I agree with you. I mean, I think it's that conversation and the speaking and getting the history and kind of getting a sense that does help you with the diagnosis. So absolutely. Thank you. I wanted just to quickly see if there's any other final thoughts on this before we move to our slide in the deck. I didn't want to close it out in case anybody else wanted to add anything in. You guys good with that? All right, so Tanya, if you could open up slide 11. This is something that we all wanted to make sure we're leaving with our audience is just, you know, the call to action. I think you often go to different sessions or conferences and then you walk away thinking, okay, it was a great discussion, but now what? So we started this session, if you joined just before the top of the hour, with the music from Not Staying Quiet Anymore from Milk. And we all need to find and use our voices for good. And so before we actually move into the Q&A portion, we wanted to share a couple of calls to action that we as a group thought would be good. And so next slide. So Juliana, if you want to kick us off with vote.
Yeah, definitely. I think we are in a time where we can't afford to take the luxury of not voting just because we're not happy or, feeling that we identify with certain candidates. I think that it's absolutely critical to help who we are, help women in our careers, help underrepresented folks in our careers, and in our communities have access to the type of resources that they need to really improve their lives. And so just my call to action, vote, check your registration, encourage your friends and families to vote. This is the one way that if you feel like you don't have a voice, this is the way to do it. And just a reminder, because we are in the time of COVID-19, stay safe. You can sign up for absentee ballots and vote by mail where possible.
Vote, vote, vote. Absolutely. Subha, you want to take us to self-care? You're on mute.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so one of the things that I have been experiencing is, showing empathy, right? Empathy is the key during these pandemic times. It's not only empathy, like empathize with yourself, but towards others, right? I'm sure many of you watched the movie Wonder. This is like a 10-year-old's view of how the world is today, but how the world could change for better, right? So there is this quote in that movie I absolutely love, and I would like to share that with you today. We carry with us as human beings, not just the capacity to be kind, but the very choice of kindness. Today, make the choice towards you and others.
Ah, that's so vital. Kindness. Absolutely. Jing, moving into community.
Yeah, love that movie. That's our family's favorite movie too, Wonder. So for community, I would say, to add on what Subha just said, be kind and be mindful to yourself, and also be kind and mindful to others. This is actually a new chapter of life we're dealing right now. And don't forget, continue to build up your network, even though you may need to try creative way, try to build a distant network, but don't stop doing that. and try to be mindful about have some empathy on the different challenge individual facing in this community, and get a changing scenery and try to establish a healthy routine and continue to contribute to the new norm and new community.
Yes, 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 yes. And for some of you who are commenting in the chat and it's only coming to all of us panelists, you might want to do a little copy paste and get it to everybody, because I see a couple of thoughts in there that you'd like to share broadly. And lastly, Toni, advocating for justice.
I am so sorry. The gardeners are blowing outside. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah. This is the reality of the new now.
Exactly. So in the recent months since George Floyd's murder, my family has become much more engaged and active, especially our 21-year-old son, who led a protest march on June 5th in our city with 5,000 attendees. And he has since continued to be very active, meeting with police, city council, mayors of Palo Alto, Mountain View, Los Altos, and so on. And that has pushed me to be an advocate as well. So what I want people to do is to be an advocate for justice, whether it be social justice, racial justice, environmental justice. We have to look out for each other. So what I think this goes along with what Jing and Subha were saying, empathy. We all win when we all do well. It's not a pie. No one's going to get a slice and more of the slice than others. If we all look out for each other and fight for each other, then the world will truly be a better place. And we want to embrace people for who they are, and we want to accept people for who they are and not judge people for who they are. And I think part of that is to go out to make sure you're connecting with your council, you're connecting with your mayor, you're speaking out against any racism, homophobia, gender issues that you see, so that people know it's not acceptable, and then we'll have the courage to speak out as well.
Love it. Yes. And I think he's just doing a fabulous job, as all of you are in your family. So very grateful for that. So we're going to move into our Q&A time, and I'm just keeping an eye on the clock to make sure that we can cover your questions. I'm going to pull open the Q&A tab, and I'll read a question, and any of the panelists feel free to either jump right in or just put your hand up real quick, however you want to do that. Totally fine. And I'll just start at the very top of the Q&A tab, and some long comments and questions in here. So I'll just read it and let it sink in and then respond. So one of the questions coming in was, I've experienced barriers to crossing over into private industry. Specifically, I work for the federal government, partnering with several Bay Area counties in program management and people management to create more efficient systems. Anytime governments are involved, the work is complex. How do I get past recruiters to someone that can see my transferable abilities in program management and process improvement? I feel like I am put into a box based on gender, title, and employer without any true understanding. Who wants to take that one on?
I can start with an experience that I had, is that it took me almost 3 years to get into my current role. I was pigeonholed in my legal role from working at a law firm. And of course, that was a while ago. I was younger in my career, and so I was pretty relentless with applying for every type of different role. I applied for one role to be a mailroom clerk. just to get my foot in the door. And so I think that there's a certain point in time where you can afford to do that. But if you are more advanced in your career, if you have a family, you might not be able to do that step back to have more of an entry-level role. And so I don't know if any of the other panelists have thoughts on how we can try to get more diverse candidates with diverse experiences that may not have the exact job requirements or backgrounds that we typically look for. Does anyone else have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I can probably jump in. I would just say, use the example I shared with you. I'm probably the only current individuals in my current group that actually has a statistical background. I would say earlier in your career, when you really start with what you easily get, to the point just raised, to get your foot in the door. So maybe start as a good company with a position you may not ideal. But I would say keep your eye open, try to build your network, and try to gain the skills you need to help you make some advance in your career. If I would just bury myself in pure statistical issues, I wouldn't get to my current position. I think try to keep your eye open, try to make sure you can offer what others cannot. You will draw attention from other individuals. You will get more opportunities. You'll be noticed. I think also importantly, try to build a strong network in this company so they get to know you, they get to see different side of you. That's really, really critical. Don't be so restricted on what you think you are capable of doing. You'll be amazed at how many opportunities outside that.
Love it. I'll read the other open question that we have. It looks like our panelists have answered a lot of the questions that came in through Q&A. So thank you, thank you. The other one that I see open here says, while we can change our behaviors relatively easily, how do we change the systems and environments of work and how women are perceived? For example, looking more deeply at women negotiating, while it's true women negotiate less than men, the research showing it is often because of a real need to avoid the social cost, either being poorly perceived for negotiating that stifles their working relationships. And then the person asking the question said, to me, this is disheartening because it feels like it's not a behavior that we can control. Any advice? And there was a Harvard Business Review link in here. So any thoughts on negotiation, just how it's perceived?
I understand what this attendee is speaking about. I had not asked for nor received a raise in over 10 years while I was working, and it did not even occur to me that it's something I should push for. And I think I was hesitant because I was undervaluing myself. And so I think we also worry, especially as women, that we don't want to seem overly greedy, maybe. We don't want to push too hard. But we have to remember that we have to value what we are giving to whether it's our work, whether it's something else we're involved with. We have to value ourselves more. And so we have to take the risk, if it's a risk, of pushing for what we want. So I sent an email, and literally 4 hours later, I got a response saying, of course, no problem. Raise is done. You'll see it on your next paycheck. And so sometimes I think we assume that we're going to get the reaction that maybe we won't. And so we should go in with more of a positive attitude and remember that we have to value what we're contributing.
Ooh, good answer. I love it.
I also would like to add something to that, Anisha, and use data to your advantage. This is something I feel like most of the time women kind of tend to take the emotion, like, I mean, how come they didn't recognize what I've been doing for this long? This is something that needs to be like having that expectation, take that out of the equation and you present the data, what you have done, and, and you negotiate it like, they don't have any other choice except to accept that, right? So you take with all your proofs and say, hey, you go. And I deserve this. So I think that's something that we need to get better at doing.
Oh, hear, hear. So I know we just hit the 1 o'clock time frame, which is our 1 hour. I can't believe how fast it goes. And again, I feel like we could dive into all of these topics for so much longer. So maybe when we do this live, you guys, in a year or so, we can have like a nice long 2-hour session all together in person and be able to see each other and be in a room all together. I want to do a big shout out and thank you to the panelists. Beautiful artwork, Melissa. I'm absolutely loving it. I've been watching it as it's growing there in the box. And I also want to thank all of you panelists for allowing your Wonder Women capes just to flow behind you through this whole presentation, for sharing your stories, for sharing your journey, and just for being vulnerable and open with all of us. So big thank you, and thank you to all of the attendees who joined us today. Really appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.